Prime Minister's questions.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition and Member of Parliament for Diego Martin West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Prime Minister state the basis upon which the government makes policy decisions, particularly macroeconomic policy, without a properly functioning central statistical office?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, firstly, let me state that the CSO has been providing macroeconomic data to the government and the wider public on a fairly consistent basis over the past 5 years and indeed for decades before that. The data includes figures for the GDP, inflation, the labour market and trade statistics. There have been challenges with timelines of the labour statistics, but I've been assured by the CSO that the figures will be up to date by June of 2015 this year. Currently, the CSO is only 1 quarter behind with respect to the labour statistics. In comparison, I would like to note that our labour data is still better than most of the data provided in other Caribbean jurisdictions. The data for the retail price index is updated monthly and is currently considered robust. We have worked with the IMF to attain the highest standard. The problems with the CSO have been existing for quite some time, but the divisions have been strengthened and they produce today accurate data, and I say by June of this year, even the labour statistics will be up to date. The same CSO, Mr. Speaker, which supported Vision 2020, has been supporting and has supported all our policy documents, including the medium-term policy framework.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Is the government saying that members of the government have been receiving CSO data under the various headings as described by the Prime Minister?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
This is information from Line Minister Dr. Tiwari with respect to data being received by from the CSO.
You, as a member of the government and Prime Minister, have you been receiving that data from the CSO under the various headings?
Well, I don't want to say you know better, Honourable Prime Minister or the member for Separate. But can ask the question?
I'm sorry?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes, thank you. Have I personally been receiving them? As a government, we have been receiving them through the Line Minister responsible for the CSO.
Well, since this body of data exists and the government has been receiving it, could the Prime Minister explain why such data have not been provided to the House during the last budget debate and since and even before that?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. We will make some inquiries as to the accuracy of the statement made, that it was not provided, and get back to the Honourable Member.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Is the Prime Minister saying that she's unaware that during the last budget debate, no CSO data was presented to this House?
The Prime Minister is not, that is not my response to the question from the Honourable Member.
Going on. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Can the Prime Minister state whether the government has a medium-term policy framework, a medium-term fiscal framework? If so, can the Prime Minister provide this information to the House?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes, Honourable Speaker, the government does have a medium-term policy framework. This was a document 2011-2014. The future document is in preparation and will be ready in time for the next national budget.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Clearly, the Prime Minister didn't hear the question. The question is about a fiscal framework.
The medium-term policy framework includes data with respect to fiscal policy.
Well, if that is so, and if what is presented there satisfies the question, was that presented to Moody's?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
I would think that this was presented. Indeed, when Moody's raised the issue, we had indicated that in 2010, our policy framework was contained in the People's Partnership Manifesto. That manifesto was laid in this Parliament and was adopted as government policy framework. This information was shared by the Minister of Finance with Moody's. Indeed, the Minister of Finance travelled to Washington to have discussions with Moody's.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Does the Prime Minister think, based on what the Prime Minister has just said, does the Prime Minister think that she's sending the right signal to the international financial markets and foreign investors, given her cavalier, nonchalant, and downright dismissive attitude. I'm putting a question to the Prime Minister. Can I do it in peace, sir? I want to repeat the question in silence, please. Does the Prime Minister think that she's sending the right signal to the international financial markets and foreign investors, given her cavalier, nonchalant, and downright dismissive attitude? Mr. Speaker,
48-4. Supplemental?
I would like to complete my question, please.
It's a supplemental, right?
I would like to complete the question I'm putting to the Prime Minister. Dismissive attitude and her nonchalant and downright dismissive attitude to Moody's downgrade.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on 48-4, insulting and derogatory language.
He can't do better.
Please. The Honourable Prime Minister?
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I think that question calls into question the arrogance and contempt of the Honourable and to say,
Please,
to
please.
say
please.
in response to the question, the answer is yes, but not with respect to the rest of the language. Yes, we are sending the right signals. And I do not believe the Honourable Member is sending the right signals with his contemptuous and arrogant behaviour and indeed unpatriotic behaviour to Trinidad and Tobago.
Mr. Speaker, before I proceed on your caution that the Prime Minister is accusing me of being unpatriotic. And I would like to know if you will accept that as parliamentary.
Yes, but you accuse me of being everything else.
Mr. Speaker,
Please. Could I ask that we have respect for each other, and I would ask both the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition to use language that is quite acceptable and dignified in this House. I don't believe that we should be accusing anyone or each other of unpatriotic behavior. We are all citizens of this country, and we are all honourable members. I would like to suggest that if you have no further supplemental, we go on to the next question.
point of clarification. On a point of clarification, Mr. Speaker, again, I do not want to violate any aspect of the House's standing orders. So on a point of clarification, is the word nonchalant or dismissive or cavalier unparliamentary? Just for your guidance, for my guidance, sir?
No, I haven't ruled that.
Good, thank you very much. So accusations about my conduct are unfounded.
I haven't ruled in, let us continue. I have not ruled that your language is unparliamentary. I'm saying let us conduct ourselves in an environment where we respect each other.
I'm just seeking clarification and your guidance so that there'll be no misunderstanding with respect to the nature of the proceedings and my involvement in it.
Please, please. Who's, just a second. Oh, I thought it was coming from outside. All right, may I ask all members, please, because I know there's a tendency for members to keep their phone sometimes in the normal mode. We are in the House of Representatives. May I ask all members to put their phone either on silent or on vibrate, please, so that we won't have any future disturbances. The Honourable Member for Diego Martin West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. To the Honourable Prime Minister, does the government of Trinidad and Tobago have a debt management strategy? And if so, can the Honourable Prime Minister provide such information to this House?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, the answer is obviously yes, Honourable Speaker. We do have a debt management strategy. To provide the information, I would need more time than we have, and therefore that information can be readily provided by the Minister of Finance. So, as I say, the Minister of Finance and the Economy elaborated on this matter in the House, if I'm not mistaken, on the objective of balancing the budget and eliminating deficit positions.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Having been advised that there is such a strategy, Did the Prime Minister and our government provide such strategy to Moody's before we were downgraded?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
I think the answer to that is yes. And again, the Honourable Minister of Finance is very hands-on on these matters. As I said, he expatiated on this in the Parliament, in the House on Friday, and in other spaces. The answer to your question is yes.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister thinks that this has been done. Can the Prime Minister confirm that it has been done?
Yes. The answer is yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
The Honourable Leader of the
Thank
Opposition.
you. In light of the present downgrade by Moody's Investor Services,
Please,
Mr. Speaker.
please, let us have one. Please, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition has the floor rather. Please allow him to speak in silence.
I'll take the House.
You have the floor. You have the floor, and please allow him to raise his questions in silence. Continue, Honourable Leader.
In light of the present downgrade by Moody's Investor Services, what are the implications for state enterprises that have outstanding international debt liabilities?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
I think, well, I shouldn't think, I should say, I would say that we have to remember that the grade Baa2 is still an investment grade status, and we expect the implications to be minimal in the short term. Further, where bonds have already been issued, remember this is related to bonds, where the bonds are already issued, those rates have already been fixed. Any new borrowings would have to be, will have to take place in the context of prevailing international market rates that are going.
The Honourable Leader of the
Does the
Opposition.
Prime Minister anticipate any increased cost or other implications for the downgrade?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
No, at this time we do not expect any increased costs for the downgrade.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Can the Prime Minister tell this Honourable House what is the likelihood that existing lines of credit for state enterprises will be discontinued, and if so, what is the government's plan to keep these enterprises afloat if such a development occurs?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Again, I think we want to remember that the grade that we are now in, which is the Baa2, is still an investment grade. In fact, it is far better than many countries in the world. It is still a very high grade, and therefore we do not expect these state enterprises to collapse. We don't expect that to happen.
The Honourable Leader of the
Is the
Opposition.
Prime Minister aware that Moody's have indicated that if certain conditions prevail and certain things are not done, that further downgrades could be forthcoming, and in which case, if those things are not done, whether further downgrades are being catered for?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Honourable Speaker, we are working towards what I said the Minister of Finance expressed in the House, that is cutting deficits and balancing the books, balancing the budget. To say that we speculate that there will be further downgrades, you know, again, it's like the sky is going to fall tomorrow, the sky will not fall down tomorrow. We are working on these matters. In 2008-9, in fact, this country experienced a downgrade. And your then minister and the Minister of Finance, I believe it was then Minister Conrad Enel, he said it was no big thing. This happens from time to time. We take note of it, and we continue to work to deal with deficits. We inherited these deficits. And in fact, two of the bonds in Petrotrin, which we'll come to in a while, those bonds that Petrotrin are in their debt portfolio were bonds that were issued in 2007 and 2009, having to do with the failed gas to liquids project, if you recall. And that is almost the majority of the debt of Petrotrin, Honourable Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Can the Prime Minister state what would be the approximate increased cost to Petrotrin's borrowing portfolio given the recent downgrade by Moody's?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Honourable Speaker, members, Petrotrin's debt portfolio includes two major bonds, which I just spoke of, with international investors, one for US $750 million, issued in May 2007, and another one for US $850 million, issued in August 2009. These bonds constitute approximately 2/3 of Petrotrin's total debt. The bonds were issued to finance the gasoline optimization program and the failed gas to liquids project. The coupon rate on these two bonds are fixed rates. However, if there are new borrowings, so on the existing bonds, those rates are already fixed and was fixed before we came into office. The coupon rate on these, as I say, fixed. For new borrowings, the rate would be determined by prevailing market conditions.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Can the Prime Minister state whether the government of Trinidad and Tobago has written any formal complaints or objections to Moody's Investment Services, challenging the services downgrading of Trinidad and Tobago, the NGC,
All right,
and the THA?
Honourable Member, I think you are really speaking on behalf, and you can't, on behalf of the Honourable Member for Shogunus West. So I recognize the member for Shogunus West at this time. Shogunus West.
If you believe this is a laughing matter, go ahead.
The Honourable Member for Shogunus West. Please, order. Please. Allow the member for Shogunus West.
Thank you, Mr.
The floor.
Speaker.
Please.
Can the Prime Minister state whether the government has written any formal complaints or objections to Moody's Investment Service challenging the services downgrading of Trinidad and Tobago, the NGC, Petrotrin, and the THA?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
The answer is no written complaint has been made. However, the Minister of Finance engaged in discussions with Moody, and of course, as I said, in this very House, has outlined his position.
Supplemental.
The Honourable Leader, member for
Can the
Shogunus
Prime
West.
Minister advise if any formal complaints are expected to be made?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
The Honourable Minister of Finance has not made an objection in writing, but he has made his objections orally, sir. And that, whether you see it informal or formal, a complaint has been made.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now that the government has placed an order for offshore patrol vessels, is the Prime Minister now of the view that significant aspects of crime fighting involve activities at sea using patrol vessels?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
First, Mr. Speaker, the vessels that we have ordered are not offshore patrol vessels. They are not OPVs. They have a different use. The vessels ordered have a different use in maintaining law and order. And so let's take that out of our minds. The OPVs was a failed idea of the then government, the PNM government. These coastal patrol vessels are designed to work in what is known as a Pier 2 area of operations that extends 2 miles from shore to 22 miles offshore. Mr. Speaker, the OPVs were to work much further out of sea and therefore would not have locked down the coastal borders. These will work in a shorter, they're known as long-range patrol vessels or coastal patrol vessels, so they can lock down our maritime borders very close to shore. Further, these vessels are coming at a far cheaper rate than anything envisaged with the OPVs, the failed OPVs. Far cheaper, far cheaper. And so, Mr. Speaker, we know that illicit drugs and weapons and so on are centered in the area of the Gulf of Paria, just off the north coast and the south coast. These coastal patrol vessels are designed to work in conjunction with interceptors to patrol our borders and close that maritime wall that has been penetrated. Mr. Speaker, may I say also that not all the vessels, the 12 vessels, are coastal patrol vessels. Some of them are interceptors. I believe, no, you wrote it down here first. 6 are interceptors, 4 coastal patrol vessels, and 2 utility vessels, Mr. Speaker. This is all part of a holistic national security plan. It is not about blimps in the sky ideas. We are very serious about securing our borders, and these vessels will seal that maritime wall and work closely with other law enforcement agencies as we create a safe coastline for the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Given that it had been said that we did not need vessels offshore, and that the fight and that,
Please.
and that the fight against crime is not on sea, it's on land, is the Prime Minister in a position to tell us now whether any of these vessels are amphibious and will be working on land?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Honourable Speaker, I'm not sure what is the question. We are saying we will lock down the maritime borders. We have taken steps so to do. That took us a process of time in order to get to hear. We had teams visiting various shipyards, the experts visiting various shipyards, making assessments with respect to what would be the best vessels to be purchased that is cost effective. The OPVs, Mr. Speaker, would not have served our purpose. They were being further out at sea, much further out, and would not have suited the waters or the locking down of the borders. Further, the statement has been made that we didn't need vessels. We said we did not need OPVs. We did not need OPVs. We are very conscious we must lock down on land and at sea, and we are taking measures to deal with both, Honourable Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Is the Prime Minister now ready to say that she's revising the position that we didn't need to be at sea and we need to be on land?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Honourable Speaker, I'm saying we need to be on land and around our borders at sea as well, and that is what we are working to deal with.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
In the context of what the Prime Minister just said about new purchases and what they need to do, where does the vessel from China fit into this, and when will that vessel arrive?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
The negotiations for the Chinese vessel are ongoing with respect to funding and financing of that vessel. We expect to have that vessel sometime within this year in Trinidad and Tobago. That vessel will also be one that will help us with the borders. We are getting it at a very cost-effective figure, and it can also be used for training of those officers who would need to be at sea.
Next question, number 9.
I thought I had nothing.
No, I think you have gone.
You're running out of time.
So let's go to 9 now. Time is about.
We want to get to that motion quickly.
Can the Prime Minister...
Please, allow the Leader of the Opposition to speak, please.
He's anxious to get to his motion, sir.
I see.
But he'll have to wait.
Yes.
Can the Prime Minister state when exactly does she expect the first of the 12 offshore patrol vessels recently ordered to arrive in Trinidad and Tobago?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
I say again, these are not offshore patrol vessels.
They are land vessels.
They are not offshore patrol vessels. They are not OPVs. These are coastal patrol vessels. Mr. Speaker?
Yes.
Let's get that very clear, and there's more than semantics in dealing with offshore patrol vessels versus the coastal patrol vessels. We expect the first of the vessels to arrive before the end of May this year, sir.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Can the Prime Minister state whether she's in agreement with the position taken by the Attorney General as reported in the recent Auditor General's report, that the Auditor General must approve all legal opinions submitted by the legal officer in the Auditor General's office prior to their submission to the Auditor General?
Sure.
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this matter arose in response to a letter from the Auditor General to the then Attorney General on 22nd July 2013. Thereafter, the then Attorney General wrote to the Auditor General by letter dated 31st July 2013, and in response, the then AG drew attention to Section 10(1)(f) of the Exchequer and Audit Act, which provides that the Auditor General may present a case to the Attorney General for his advice, and in that regard, the Attorney General invited the Auditor General to submit any case in accordance with this section for his review. So that this was done then, pursuant to Section 10(1)(f) of the Exchequer and Audit Act, under the remit of that act.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
So the Prime Minister is confirming that as her understanding is, as is mine, that there is not a requirement for the legal advisor to the Auditor General to first send his or her opinion to the Attorney General for approval before that advice is given to the Auditor General. Are we clear on that?
The Honourable
No,
Prime
no,
Minister.
that was not my reply at all. And, that was not my reply, sir. And I repeat, the correspondence came from a letter, first a letter from the Auditor General to the then Attorney General. The then Attorney General wrote to the Auditor General and wrote pursuant to Section 10(1)(f) of the Exchequer and Audit Act. So I repeat the statement I made earlier, sir.
I'm not contesting a correspondence I have not seen. I am putting to the Honourable Prime Minister a specific situation of interpretation, which is that correspondence as referred to in the Auditor General's report. I'm drawing from that there is a position being advanced and had been advanced under your government that before a legal officer to the Auditor General can submit a legal opinion to that independent office, that such an opinion ought to go to the Attorney General for his approval. I'm asking the Prime Minister whether she is in fact in support of that position, or I'll go a little further, that interpretation.
The Honourable Prime Minister.
The interpretation as given is with respect to Section 10(1)(f) of the Exchequer and Audit Act, and I can read it for you. I have considered. Look, what happened is that the Auditor General's Department had recently hired a legal officer, an internal legal officer, and the Auditor General wrote to the then Attorney General, as I indicated, and the then Attorney General responded, saying the subject head, reconciliation of Section 10(1)(f) of the Exchequer and Audit Act, Chapter 6901, with legal advice given internally by the legal officer recently hired by the Auditor General's Department. And the then Attorney General indicated, having considered Section 10(1)(f) of the Exchequer and Audit Act, I am of the opinion that any advice provided by any legal officer in your department would require the prior approval of the Attorney General.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister's explanation confused the issue even further. If there was no issue, could the Prime Minister explain why would this issue be in the Auditor General's report? And that's rhetorical, but I'm asking the Prime Minister, is the Prime Minister prepared to accept any interpretation which says that before the Auditor General can be properly advised by her staff, giving legal opinion, that opinion ought to be vetted and approved by the Auditor General? I'm asking the Prime Minister, what is your position on that
Vetted by the
interpretation?
Auditor General
By
or the Attorney General?
Attorney General.
You said Auditor General.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Okay.
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Honourable Speaker, I accept that as the interpretation of the law at this time.
The Honourable Leader of the... no, I recognize the Honourable Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Difficult one, more professional.
To the Prime Minister, according to the Auditor General's 2014 report, approximately $1.9 million in professional fees have been paid out of public monies to 3 persons who served as temporary government senators. Is the Prime Minister of the view that this may appear to be undue preferential treatment to persons in support of the government?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
I wonder if the member will be so kind enough to point out where in this Auditor General's report this matter is indicated, because I got this question just a short while ago and I've searched the report and I have been unable to locate it. Would you be kind enough to tell us on which page?
I'll be happy to oblige, Madam Prime Minister. Under other matters, you have Section 12. The 3 names are there.
Page?
I don't have no.
You
Page
don't
5.
I'm
Other
sorry.
matters.
Page?
I have page 5.
5 in the report, yes?
Other matters.
Page 5.
Can I give you my copy?
No, we have the report here.
I have the report. Here. Okay. Thank you very much, Honourable Member. The exercise of discretion to select counsel is a matter under the portfolio of the Honourable Attorney General. The selection of temporary senators falls under the portfolio of the Prime Minister. It is important to note that these are 2 separate functions, Honourable Speaker, and it is not unusual that where an attorney is deemed to have the competence to prosecute or to litigate in any matter, that such an attorney should be hired. It has been the practice in this Parliament, before this 10th Parliament, and the other parliaments under previous administrations, where persons have served as full-time senators, full-time government senators, and in fact receive remuneration from, and briefs on remuneration from the state. So this is not an unusual circumstance. Once it is a competence is found for whatever is required, whether it be for legalese or for serving in the Parliament.
Supplemental.
The Honourable Member for Chaguanas West.
Dana.
Prime Minister, thank you for your response. But I'm not concerned what happened before. I'm concerned what happened under this new regime that came to do better. And Prime Minister, under Part 4
Part 4 of what?
of the Laws of Trinidad and Tobago, Chapter 2201, 24B says, I quote,
Which act is it, please?
all I have here, my Ministry of Legal Affairs,
The
Laws
name
of
of
Trinidad and
the act.
Tobago, Chapter 2201,
What's the
Integrity in
name?
Public Life.
Okay.
And I pull the
Integrity Act.
page, and it says 24.1, a person to whom this part applies shall ensure that he performs his functions and administers the public resources for which he is responsible in an effective and efficient manner, and shall, I go to B, afford no undue preferential treatment to any group or individual. That's what I'm referring to.
Now, what's the question?
And I'm saying, of course, in the light of this, would you say, and forget what happened before, would you say that this, of course, reflects some degree of preferential treatment to these three?
I am not of that view, Honourable Member, and should you feel there has been a breach of the integrity law, I'm sure you know what to do.
Familiar with the integrity.
We have now reached 2:15. 30 minutes would be now up. I now ask the Leader of the House.
Yeah,
We can proceed.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has consented to proceed to extend the time for Prime Ministerial questions so that we can complete, I believe, 16 questions have been filed to the Honourable Prime
The Honourable Member for Chaguanas West.
Mr. Speaker, Madam Prime Minister, the audited financial statements for a number of statutory authorities and state enterprises are outstanding, including, but not limited to, WASA, UDICOT, Caribbean Airlines, ETEC, National Quarries, and EMBD. Given the fall in oil prices, does the Prime Minister have any plan to strengthen the accountability arrangements for these and other state bodies?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
The answer is yes, sir. And indeed, these statements are being worked upon and will be made public as soon as they become available.
The Honourable Member for Chaguanas West.
Let me say congratulations, Prime Minister. Thank you very much. Prime Minister, with respect to the government's stated intention to build a causeway between Port of Spain and Chaguaramas, could the Prime Minister state whether the government is in possession of any feasibility study, proposal, design, or estimate for the causeway, and the date and author of any such report?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
In 2008, there was a preliminary investigation done for the Chaguaramas Causeway. This investigation was done by AECOM and submitted on March 16, 2010. Based on this preliminary investigation, an estimated ballpark cost was given at between $6 to $8 billion. In 2014, NIDCO engaged CariTrans, a local firm, to find a more cost-effective way to provide increased access to Chaguaramas, looking at combining a causeway with widening the existing roadway. This was estimated at about $2 billion, plus the cost of acquiring any properties that may fall along the proposed highway. To date, there has been no full feasibility study on solutions to provide increased access to Chaguaramas. The most recent cabinet decision in this regard to build the access to and from Chaguaramas and to hold consultations for SAFE. So that decision was taken sometime, I think it was last month, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe 2 months ago, but it had been before the cabinet sometime before.
The Honourable Member for Chaguanas West.
Thanks again, Prime Minister. Prime Minister, do you recall that in 2012, under the then Minister of Works and Transport at the time, the French government had offered to prepare a study for an underground tunnel from Diego Martin up to the President's house? What has come of that, if anything?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
I will make some inquiries from the present Minister of Works and Transport and ask him to provide information, Honourable Member.
The Honourable Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can the Prime Minister indicate where the government conducted any comprehensive national transportation study since entering office? And if so, where can one obtain a copy?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
There has been, Honourable Member of Chaguanas West, through you, Honourable Speaker, there has been no comprehensive national transportation study since 2006. In 2002, the then cabinet agreed to the preparation of a comprehensive national transport study at a cost of $18 million. In 2004, the Ministry of Works and Transport entered into a contract with Parsons, Brick & Huff, Quaid, and Douglas Incorporated of the USA. This study was completed and submitted to the Ministry of Works and Transport in 2006. However, the study was not accepted by the then ministry and therefore could not be sent to Cabinet for approval. My Cabinet has already approved the establishment of a transit authority, one which mandate will be to develop a national transportation policy. One of the initiatives my government has undertaken thus far is the commissioning of a bus rationalization study, which will determine the correct type of buses to be used on the nation's roads, and the Minister of Transport has stated that this will be sent to Cabinet shortly. My government is very much aware of the traffic congestion and inconveniences some of our traveling public face. However, we have done major infrastructure work across Trinidad and Tobago, including the Diego Martin Highway, the Valencia Bypass, the Grand Bazaar and Point 14 Highway, which is ongoing, and of course, Honourable Member for Chaguanas West, through the Honourable Speaker, would recall that together you and I turned the sod for the construction of the Point 14 Highway.
The Honourable Member for Chaguanas West.
Yes, Prime Minister, I do recall together you and I turned the sod. That's why I'm a bit surprised. I was never invited to any function to open any part of it.
But I remember, will you give way?
Oh, sure.
Certainly, I will speak with my Minister of Works that when we are opening any of these roads and so on, that he should make sure.
The Honourable Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Madam Prime Minister. I hope he's here when the next piece is opened.
Oh, yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
I hope you are there when it
I'll be here.
opens.
With respect to the report of the Elections and Boundaries Commission on the local government elections of 2013, as required by Sub-Rule 106(6) of the Representation of the People Act, could the Prime Minister state why her government has withheld publication of this report and when it will be released?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to disagree with the Honourable Member that the government has withheld the report of the EBC on local government elections held in 2013. The EBC, that report has not been submitted to the Cabinet. The report was sent to the Ministry of Local Government on 29 May 2014 and resubmitted 15 April 2015. So the Local Government Ministry will have to bring it to Cabinet and we will lay it shortly in the Parliament.
Yes, the Honourable Member
Just
for
one. Prime Minister,
Chaguanas West.
don't you find it mind-boggling that a year ago we were submitted to the Ministry of Local Government and 1 year later we are still nowhere?
The Honourable Prime
I
Minister.
agree with you, sir. Yes.
Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Point 14.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The audit of overseas missions are conducted on a rotational basis. The audit of 7 Trinidad and Tobago overseas missions and offices, which were scheduled for audit in 2014, were not done because the Auditor General's request for Cabinet approval for overseas travel dated June 30th, 2014, was not approved until January 15, 2015. Can the Prime Minister state what was the cause for this 6-month delay in Cabinet approval?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
The note was received in fiscal 2014. It was deferred for confirmation pending submission of dates of visit. That was finalized this year, January 2015.
The Honourable Member for Point 14.
Honourable Prime Minister, do you recognise that this delay was in fact 6 months, and to my mind, the Cabinet, well, I'll leave out the opinion, but do you realise that the Cabinet is almost acting in contravention of Section 1166 of the Constitution, in the sense that you are almost timing the Auditor General in exercising his functions freely?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
No. You can't be almost. I'm almost timing.
Come
no.
on, sir.
Please, Member
so-
for Point 14.
You know, you ask a question, just have the whatever to hear the reply. If you have a supplemental, I'll gladly answer the supplemental. But there's no point mumbling under your breath. You know, Mr. Speaker, there's something called a THA. For 10 years, talking about timing the work of the Auditor General, for 10 years or more, No audited statements. And when the statement actually comes now for 2006 or sometime way back when, there's a one line because they did not comply with anything within it. To say that 6 months that these persons did not travel to overseas missions is to be stopping work of the Auditor General. I think it's to be pressing it and pushing it very far. If approval was given in this January 2015 this year, and therefore I do disagree with the statements the Honourable Member is making.
The Honourable Member for Point 40.
Is there any particular reason why specific missions were not allowed to be subjected to the audit at this time? And I'm speaking about the UK, Costa Rica, India, Canada, and Brazil.
There is no reason. In fact, you're selecting out, you're saying why specific ones were not allowed to be audited. It was not a question of allowing or disallowing. It was a question of finalizing dates for travel by the Auditor General and their team, of course.
All right, that's it.